Welcome to Study Session 4, the Berlin Conference, 1884 to 1885. Introduction. In this session, you will learn about the events that precipitated the call for Berlin Conference in 1884, having discussed the methods by which European powers acquired territories in Africa. We shall now examine how they were able to avert war among themselves in their scramble for territorial acquisition in the continent. The race for treaties with African rulers, and indeed occupation of African territories, often led to rivalry and acrimony among European powers. However, tensions eventually died down as the Europeans were able to agree on the modalities for sharing African territories among themselves. This agreement was reached at the Berlin Conference 1884 to 1885. The race for treaties with African rulers, and indeed occupation of African territories, often led to rivalry and acrimony among European powers. However, tensions usually died down as the Europeans were able to agree on the modalities for sharing African territories among themselves. This agreement was reached at the Berlin Conference 1884 to 1885. Learning outcomes. When you have studied this session, you should be able to 1. Explain why the representatives of European countries interested in Africa met at Berlin. 2. Discuss the decision reached by the European countries at the Berlin Conference. 3. Explain how the decisions affected the partition of African territories among European nations. 4. Explain the importance of the Berlin Conference for the eventual colonization of Africa. Prelude to the Berlin Conference. 2 events served as prelude to the Berlin Conference. The first was King Leopold's interest in the Congo Basin, while the second was the German acquisition of colonies in West Africa. King Leopold's interest in the Congo Basin. King Leopold II of Belgium formed an association called International African Association in 1876 for the purpose of scientific exploration of the Congo. He sent H.M. Stanley on exploratory voyages to the area in 1879. Stanley revealed the wealth of the Congo Basin, where existed plenty of rubber trees that will provide raw materials for industry in Europe. He also signed treaties with established King Leopold's sphere of influence in the area. Thus, the scientific means of King Leopold's carrying out his secret territorial ambitions in the Congo. The king's action aroused the suspicion of European powers that were quick to realize that he wanted to use the association to carve out an empire for himself in the Congo. Reactions of European countries to King Leopold's action. France was the first to react. It sent Pierre Savognin de Brazza to sign rival treaties with African rulers in the northern Congo Basin. This action was to undermine King Leopold's political interest. Portugal reacted next, having established contact with the area as far back as the 15th century. Portugal regarded the Congo as its exclusive preserve. It was therefore alarmed at the sudden intrusion of King Leopold II and France in the area. In order to frustrate the imperial schemes of these powers, Portugal signed a treaty with Britain in 1884. The treaty was regarded in Britain as a guarantee taken by Britain to prevent either France or an international syndicate directed by France from occupying the mouth of the Congo. By the treaty, Britain recognized Portugal's authority in the Congo in return for the Portuguese guarantee for free commerce and the protection of British missionaries in the Congo area. Anglo-French and German rivalry in West Africa. The Anglo-Portuguese treaty enraged France. It decided not only to defer its local West African interests against Britain but also to cooperate with Germany to threaten British interests in West Africa. It embarked on aggressive imperial policy in West Africa which aimed at establishing inter alia protectorates at Port Novo and developing interests alongside with the British in the Niger and Benue. Imperial ambition of Germany in Africa. In 1884, Germany, which hitherto had not been enthusiastic about overseas empire, suddenly showed its imperial ambitions in Africa. Bismarck, the German Chancellor, was compelled to change his attitude towards colonial acquisition because of pressure by German traders and the desire to win election. In a surprise move in 1884, he sent German warships to declare protectorates over Togoland, Cameroons, Southwest Africa, and Tanganyika, where British missionaries and traders were at work. France did not oppose the German presence in West Africa, which implies the latter's support for the French against the British. Thus, with Britain, France, Germany, Portugal, and King Leopold II of Belgium engaged in rivalry for territorial acquisition in the Congo and West Africa, it became necessary that their differences be settled to prevent outbreak of war. The Berlin Conference. The conference was held between November 1884 and February 1885. It was jointly called by Germany and France to discuss the following issues. 1. The freedom of commerce in basin and mouth of the river Congo. 2. Freedom of navigation on the rivers Congo and Niger. 3. Formalities to be observed before new occupation of territories on the coast of Africa should be internationally recognized. The following European powers attended the conference: Austria-Hungary, Belgium, Denmark, Italy, Netherlands, Portugal, Russia, Spain, Sweden, Norway, Turkey, United States of America, Germany, Britain, and France. A number of decisions and agreements were made after a series of diplomatic maneuvers by Britain, France, and Germany. The decisions are: 1. The conference recognized King Leopold II International Association as a sovereign power in Congo. 2. The River Congo was declared an international river, and freedom of navigation and commerce were to exist on the river. 3. Agreement was reached on the Code of Conduct for Territorial Acquisition in Africa in order to minimize inter-European disputes. It was decided that any European power acquiring territory or establishing protectorates on the coast of Africa should at once notify all other signatory powers. Occupation of any African territory by any European power would not be valid unless such power held an effective control over the area in matters of trade and military establishment. This has been referred to as the principle of effective control. A European power possessing a coastal area in Africa was entitled to its hinterland. Importance of the Berlin Conference. The decisions made at the conference were compromises among the European powers to ensure peaceful partition of African territories. The conference did not partition Africa, but it succeeded in providing general principles and definitions of formula to minimize inter-European disputes in their race for territorial acquisition. The conference accelerated the conquest and partition of Africa. Armed with a new code of conduct called the Berlin Act, Europeans proceeded with renewed vigor to invade, conquer, and partition African territories. Aftermath of the Berlin Conference for African territories. The scramble for territories in Africa was more intensified. Many European companies emerged in various parts of Africa. These companies were given royal charters with the objective of administering territories and carving out areas of influence in Africa on behalf of their home governments. In addition to treaties, European nations began to engage in military subjugation of African states and forcibly abrogating the sovereignty of African rulers. Summary. In Study Session 4, you have learned that the Berlin Conference was called to regulate inter-European relations in Africa in order to avert imminent crisis among them. Berlin Conference was necessitated by the wave of intense rivalry among European powers scrambling for territories in Africa, particularly in the Congo and West Africa. The Berlin Conference ensured forced navigation and commerce on the rivers Congo and Niger. The Berlin Conference provided guidelines and formula for future acquisition of territories in Africa by European powers. The aftermath of the conference witnessed escalation of European invasion and conquest of Africa. End of Study Session 4. Thanks for listening.